Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Keynes, and Ed Mann.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the however many edition we are into, Three Devs and a Maybe. That's a good start, Ed, isn't it?
Well, it's always good to know the count. Actually, let me get that up. We are so prepared for this, Lou.
Yeah,
94th episode of Three Devs and a Maybe.
Can you imagine we're so close to the 100th if we'd have just done it without realising?
That would be pretty bad, wouldn't it? Because I've kind of, in the back of my mind, I've kind of thought about, things we could do for the 100th episode. Like, I think we definitely need to be in person, all of us, somehow, try and arrange an episode for the 100th that is, like, all of us there.
All four of us.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes, because
out of the 96 times, we seem to have managed to do it at about 15.
I would love to get some stats on, who's been on the podcast and things like that, and kind of like what our kind of running totals and stuff are. It'd be pretty fun.
You're certainly accountable for the vast majority of them.
It's because I've not got a life. I think that is really the gleaming thing. The people who have been on the least times has actually got a life, as opposed to me, who just seems to be there all the time.
You don't have a life, and I want your life. So where does that leave me?
Oh, wow! There you go. I don't.
Kidding, of course. Kidding, of course.
Oh, but how you doing, though, dude?
I'm good. You should probably introduce ourselves for any new people who
may pick up the pod. Yeah,
or even any listeners. Well, let's not take for granted that anyone will.
Or they may actually know our voices already. It'd be quite interesting if they didn't.
Do I sound any more Western?
My name is I'm Lewis Keynes.
Yep, and I'm Ed, the player man.
There we go. I like it, and we make a half of the Three Devs and a Maybe team because unfortunately Fraser and Mickey couldn't make it tonight. But we're going to, have a good fun. You've got a couple of interesting things lined up, which I'm intrigued about. So, yeah, it'll be a good one.
You won't believe where they are.
Oh, go on. Where are they?
Fraser, as it happens.
As it happens.
So you can still a bit of the southeastern coming out. Fraser is having a makeover. He won that competition in Cosmo that he entered.
Finally.
So he's gone to some.
He was fingers crossed and all of that. He was for that.
Yeah, he's down the beauty salon having his nails done and whatever else people have. That joke's fallen flat already.
No, it's not a joke though. It's
not a joke.
Life.
He's having his legs waxed. I know that. Yeah, got it.
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Yeah. And what about Mickey? Where's Mickey?
Mickey, I believe he's having his roots done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's possible, but that's where he is. So yes. So I'm Lewis, and you're Ed.
Yep. So, Lou, how have you been, man? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? It should be an easy question to answer, but then you actually have to think.
Well, there you got to think. Yeah, exactly. It's been a couple of weeks now. Yeah,
it has, yeah. Last time we were on, I was talking about big projects that I was working on.
Yes, API stuff.
Yeah, I can't say too much about the specifics of it, but I've had someone contact me and has offered me some help with it. So
assistance, which is very nice indeed. Exactly. So you're saying the shout out in the podcast actually helped?
It did. I just wish I could say thanks name the person that I'm saying thanks to, but they know who they are, and I assume they'll hear this. And we may even have them on as a guest fairly shortly, so it'd be quite interesting to talk about all this stuff when we can. But so I haven't actually been working on that since we last spoke about it. My boss pulled me off that, such is the nature of our job, to work on another couple of projects that we needed to get done. So last week...
these tight deadlines and stuff like that?
It's more a case of having a couple of jobs lurking that need to get done, and we're in a bit of a quieter spell, so take the opportunity to get them done. So yeah, I managed to build 2 websites last week from start to finish, which is quite cool. They're not huge ones, but
it's nice shipping something though, isn't it? I mean, you've got it out the door, I guess, for the client to see, and then obviously ship it when it's the okay.
One of them's gone live, and the other one is waiting on some more photography. But from my point of view, it's done. So
that is it's nice getting that gratification, isn't it? It's nice to see something like out the door. People are using it in a nice short window, as opposed to the grueling kind of going through and eventually it gets released or it may never get released. That kind of horrible feeling.
Yeah, it is. I was actually looking today through my Bitbucket account, and I couldn't believe how many websites that I've built over the last 2 years or so, there must be about 20 or 30 on there, which I don't know if that sounds like a lot or not, but feels like a lot to me.
Well, they're always significant size websites, aren't they? I mean,
some are and some aren't.
Yeah.
Some of them are like ones that I've been able to do in a day, and others are 2 to 3 month jobs. It seems like a lot, but it probably is a lot. Do you think it's a lot?
I think it's a lot, definitely. I mean, the thing is that it's funny because you've kind of moved from doing some of these brochure websites, some of these kind of CMS built ones, but then you're slowly adding in like the API stuff and things. This adds complexity to the sites. And I think that's the bad thing where clients don't understand that, where the complexity gets increased so much. Where now this is just a bespoke site for you. I can't, this functionality you want is something that you want. Only you want, and I'm now going to have to write that for you specifically, as opposed to what you can normally do with say CMS systems that you do make in the client-based world that you can kind of use and take bits from.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because the specifics of the things I've been doing. Obviously, a lot of times you can look on packages or whatever and find something that someone's written to help you with it, but with these APIs that I have to work on, there isn't really anything out there. And
that may be a crying call for you to be the person, be the saviour.
It's a good challenge. I mean, I like to try and write things from scratch as much as possible, just from an ongoing maintenance basis, rather than relying on someone else. So obviously, I do use packages where I have to, and I suppose everyone does, don't they? We got too much to do to be able to write everything for ourselves.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, where they give us a lot of the help, but we have to, maybe if it's just the assembly of these packages, kind of putting them together as the puzzle pieces are, kind of like Lego fit, Lego clicking them all together, or in the sense that we build something that maybe we don't find something on packages and we have to then build our own piece, but then we can share it with the world and it goes around that ecosystem, the open source ecosystem.
It'd be cool. It's really bad. I haven't done any open source code at all, and it's not because I haven't meant to. It's just literally haven't had the opportunity to.
I think it's hard because, as you say, your initial reaction is, okay, I have a problem. Let's see if there's a package that solves this for me. Say it's like working with the library or something. And 9 times out of 10, there will already be something out there, and it's already got a good mind share and head share, and like the popularity of it's good. And there may be a couple of them. There may be a couple of ones, competing it out for the top spot. But yeah, I mean, typically you'll find something, but there will be those times where you're like, no, this is a real problem I can solve, and you write something, and maybe hopefully this will be, these API ones that you're looking at now. Hopefully there'll be a couple of abstractions out there that you can, piece it together and put in as an open source package and release, because it starts off with one commit. And then other people will come along, and they hopefully will, to get the project will get traction, and then it will just build up from there. And
I have to admit, I do wonder if the people will come along for this kind of stuff. It doesn't seem to be as popular in terms of an activity that developers seem to be doing as some of the other things, like, I don't know, integrating social media or whatever.
I think that's those are the bread and butter, aren't they? Kind of adding in these social integration endpoints and stuff and putting them into the systems. But yeah, having the things you're dealing with, which is like stuff like, property things. I mean, they are quite specific, but they are so complex. And I think the people who will need help, I mean, this may be a blog series or something like that, where you discuss kind of your trials and tribulations throughout, the process. Yeah,
there's so much stuff I want to blog and write tutorials for.
Are you jotting them down? How do you kind of do that? When you think of it, because I typically, when I think of an idea, I like write just a quick note in a text file I've got.
I email it to myself, and I just keep replying to it and sending it back every time I think of something else. So
that's good. But then unfortunately, eventually you've got to think, okay, crap, I've actually got to write something now. It's like, I better stop making this. This is not an infinite list. I better make this thing finite and actually do and pop one off the top.
One thing that I do use in my projects now, actually, which I would consider probably using for open source, is, do you remember me saying last week that I've been writing an NPM script to get away from using Gulp?
Yeah, how's that going?
It's going really well. It works fine, actually. It's cool. I wanted to get away from Gulp because there seems to be a consensus, and I've read a few things that obviously if you're using something like Gulp, you're then using Gulp plugins, and then you're relying on the maintainer of the Gulp plugin, who's then reliant on whoever product that they're wrapping. So you're kind of relying on 2 levels of developer to kind of maintain whatever you're using. Yeah. So I had this idea that I would, and also again, I didn't really seem to find anything out there that was just an NPM script that, uses the main things that we want to use, like Browserify and Babel and watching file changes and SAS and stuff like that. So the one that I've written does all that. So it's probably
awesome. How are you doing your Browserify stuff? Can I ask? Like, are you using Babelfy?
I am using. Let me get it open. Bear with me.
Because it's a little interesting tangent here. Because I was recently, like last week on Friday, I was able to spend a little time just kind of plotting out a blog post for work, and I made like a really simple. I don't know if I've sent it to you. Fun with flags game.
What, from The Big Bang Theory?
From The Big Bang Theory. There, yeah, there's the reference. And it was so essentially it's just a simple React application that is a guessing game for flags, using the emojis and stuff. And I didn't want to go through the process of using Webpack and things like that. I wanted to have a bit more of a simple process, and I ended up using Browserify. So yeah, it's interesting. So how do you go through like using Babel and then Browserifying it?
So basically, I've made my own module which brings in just literally npm Browserify and Babelify as well. And then and Watchify, as well.
Ah, so you can watch the files changing and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I use the Browserify bit to, you can pass transform to it.
Yep.
And then I pass that Babelify with presets of ES 2015 and React, so it does React as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that's great because that's interesting. You actually use that way because that was the way I was going to use it. But then I ended up, the way that I needed it was quite simple. It wasn't like I didn't need like watching. I just wanted to build it. And you can actually use that just through the command line, like the Browserify and then pass in the transformer, which is Babelfy. But your way it seems more because you're using a real script as opposed to just using, the package JSON script, just using a running command.
Yeah,
it's far more extensible.
I've done that as well, but I wanted to mess around with the API a bit more, and
it gives you more flexibility. Restricted. Absolutely, it gives you far more flexibility. I mean, when you're writing code, and I think that's one of the nice things about these configs that are code is that you can then, like configs that are code, where you have like JSON, as long as it returns a JSON object, it can execute that. But also with things like this, where your processes, you can use them in the Unix world of just running the commands and running the processes, like Browserify and Babel and stuff like that from the command line. But you can then actually just import the packages and then do it that way, which gives you far more flexibility because maybe you're going to be conditionally adding things and things like that if, you're tacking on parameters and arguments, etc.
That's exactly it. That's what mine does. I basically... I use an npm script in the package JSON file to start everything off, and then it basically gets my SAS files running. It builds a load of directories out, puts stuff in a source and destination directory, and then does the same with my JavaScript. It makes a bundled file out of like the Bower stuff that I bring in and any kind of GitHub things that I use as well. I tend to package those up now and use that just obviously reduce the amount of HTTP calls. And I've got a notifier thing that I use to tell me when I've broken something. I use Browser Sync as well. I talk about that a lot. So it fires that up, which is so good. If you not use Browser Sync, Ed, you really must.
So we don't read Browser Sync because it's the pushing, isn't it? It changes because I think Webpack Hot does that as well.
Does it?
Yeah, it pushes it directly to the browser, so it uses a WebSocket. I think is that what Browser Sync does as well. Yeah, very cool technology.
It's just amazing that you can just have everything open and you just hit save on the keyboard and you just see it all update and you haven't got to do all the continually reloading the page and stuff like that. Yeah, and what else does it do? That's it. It uses Browser Sync. So, yeah.
I think you definitely need to release that, man, because it seems interesting. Because, I mean, if you've been getting a win out of it from, moving from Gulp to this, it's definitely something to open source. Or at least gist it and then, send it out on Twitter or just write a blog post on it.
Yeah, well, what's your thoughts on doing that, like coming away from Gulp and things like that? Well,
I mean, to be honest, I think that's great. I mean, it's whatever works for you. The thing is that you get things like Webpack and the bigger systems, and then you've got Browserify, and then you get these task runners, which are like the Gulps of the world. And you can use Gulp's very good for these small little tasks, I guess. But really, npm does that already, doesn't it? Really,
yeah.
Because you can npm run and you can just run scripts, which are essentially, they're not programmed. They're not like coded in the Gulp way of having. I know with Gulp you can do piping and things like that, but they're not, programmed to whatever Gulp specification is. They're just scripts that you can run. So you can just pass it a script like you're doing and make it run that. And it's just npm's run whatever this, and you can say run build, and I want it to make it, this is how you build it, this is how you do that. And I think that stays away from being too specific on things, because it changes so quick, doesn't it, where you get grunt, then you get gulp, and you can then use things like webpack, which then webpack has its own bin, which you can then just use npm run build, and then webpack will build its things and stuff. And I don't know what the wins are now of actually using gulp. I'm talking probably naively here because I haven't really used it too much, but I think the wins were initially you could pipe things through similar to how you do in a Unix Unix system, and then you can have tiny module but the way you're crafting your current scripts seems more flexible and more in line with the fact that I'm just agnostic to any kind of task runner platform. It's just a script that you can run from the command line. It just so happens that I've got it in npm run to make it easier for me.
Yeah, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not loving npm a hell of a lot at the moment. Anyway, it's actually, you said last week about the package that got.
Oh yes, the pad left package.
Well, pad left. I've got one as well that I use in my project. Funny enough, when I'm in this thing, I'm using a package called concat, npm concat, and it's the thing that I use for all my JavaScript dependency files to just bundle them all up. And I just literally made a fresh install for a new site that I was doing the other day, and fair enough, I couldn't run npm install because this concat thing was now not.
Oh, have they removed it as well?
Yeah, I actually looked on the npm site. Yeah, they've just taken it down. So I'm.
Was that before? Because I know they've done npm have actually done some more, been a bit more strict on when they removed them. Asking the person who's going to remove it that they either keep it up for a while themselves, or that they send it over to someone else. You can give out maintainer access to someone else.
I'm just having a little look now. This package name is not currently in use, but was formerly occupied by a popular package. To avoid malicious use, npm is hanging on to the package name but loosely, and will probably give it to you if you want it.
It can't. That's interesting. So you can't. Because concat is quite a nice name. It's a small name and everything. It seems very popular in itself.
Yeah,
that could be why they're doing it, as opposed to what I would hope they'll do is that they keep it around, saying, well, you've removed it. It's hard though, again, for them, because they're using GitHub as an external remote resource for it. So, you publish your package on npm, but really the backing of where it gets downloaded from is GitHub. So if they remove it from GitHub, which has no care, about it being on npm, then they either cache it, npm has to cache it themselves, or what I think you end up having to do yourself. And it seems, this is kind of what happens in all of these dependency, when you're downloading these dependencies and stuff, probably having your own cache of them yourself, a private cache.
Yeah.
So I know that in the composer world, they have Geordie makes it's paid for service, like Tor proxy, which is kind of, you put that in between, and what it does is then that caches all of the composer assets, which makes it quicker. So say that in between your dev environment or your environment, you have this Tor proxy, and then you have the real world. It can cache those assets for you on the Tor proxy, making it quicker for you then to, what happens if, GitHub does go down or they delete their package and you've just done an npm install and you want to push this to production, you're screwed. Yeah. You are screwed. That's why having these cached versions is a really useful thing. Whether you do that based on just the fact of, you can add a caching layer yourself, really, I suppose. You could have a PHP cache layer, and it would just, obviously it would just make sure that it looks for only ones from these domains, like anything from GitHub that's a release, maybe it caches those, but then also maybe another way, and I know this actually burnt Mickey this week, I think, was is having two versions. The scariest thing to do is to kind of do an npm install or a composer install on a live site, where you just go, okay, I'm in now, I want a composer install, and you're on a live site and you're just replacing those files. And the issue then is, what happens if it goes into a balk state and it buggers up and it's like, yeah, npm install, oh, I'm trying to download this new version, I've removed the old version for some reason, but I can't get the new version, I'm just going to break the whole site. And you're like, crap. What you want to do is kind of like what we do. So my builder, what we do, and it's a very simple, easy thing, but it works so well. It's you do your build through Jenkins or whatever, or however you do it, you push it up with the vendors. So it's pushed up, all of it. That's a snapshot of that thing. It's that commit with all those composer install vendors. It's all on there, rsynced. It has a version, we have 763, and then we have a symlink of what live is, and we just switch it to 7.63 if it works.
Yeah.
Else it doesn't. So obviously what will then be nice thing is that you're not then going on the box to find out when you're trying to run it on production, crap, the install is not working. It's actually, happening beforehand, so you can, any tweaks, any problems you have. I mean, obviously when you do hot fixes and things like that, and then the version's balked, then again, this is when you need the caching in between. But yeah, I mean, this is the trouble with using other people's stuff, is it can go away.
It's always the risk, isn't it?
It's always the risk, unless you cache it yourself, unless you clone a copy, you fork a copy or something. But typically what happens is if it goes from GitHub, it's gone, and then you're like, crap. And I mean, you're then looking through your vendor directory or your, npm, your node modules directory on your dev to try and find the file. Because you're like, I need that file somewhere. Do you ever use like npm shrink wrap?
I haven't yet, actually.
That is a good idea for snapshotting things, where the nice thing about a composer lock file is you get the hashes in there, and the composer lock file literally says to...
you were talking about this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we kind of had the problems with it, because going from composer to npm and realising actually we really like composer. Like, composer's a really nice system, because, using the lock file, using the hashes in there, it's got links directly to the file they hashed. This is the commit I want, this is the release I want you to download, this is exactly it. Because even though in your composer JSON file you may have, I need at least version 1.2. If I do a composer install in my box without a lock file, and then you a couple of weeks later do a composer install without a composer lock file on it, you may get version 1.3, because I've said, and not strictly, I've just said, look, it needs to be at least 1.2. But when you're doing releases and stuff, you want to make damn sure that it's using the exact same version. You want to have control over that. You don't want to be like, on my dev box, even though it may be minor versions, you can do that. There's still that thing of, I want to know exactly, I want to be testing when I'm running my Jenkins builds, I'm using the exact same version dependencies as what I'm using on live and on dev. And so that way then, this way with Compose Locks, you get that. But with npm shrink wrap, that's when you get that with npm as well. And what it then does is it goes through and says, okay, these are the exact these are the versions you want of it. Exactly. So when you do an npm install that time with a shrink wrap file in there, it then goes, okay, I know you want these files, I know you want these versions of these dependencies, as opposed to whatever newer version it could be or whatever. So it's definitely something to consider, because that will cause, working in more, in a team-based setting, that definitely, trips us up a couple of times, has already, in the past, without having a shrink wrap file, because we're like, okay, I'm actually using, this version, because our dependency is not very strict on it. It's just saying, I want you, to use at least version 4 something. And it's like, oh, no, actually, it turns out that you were using version 4.1, I was using 4.2. So, yeah, having a shrink wrap file is very important. And also maybe considering caching these files, the assets, the vendor directories and stuff, and keeping them. But no, it's an interesting topic, because we move away into this world of dependencies, and giving kind of a lot of our trust goes into these dependencies, like trusting that these are going to be around and stuff. And the amount of times you get people going, crap, GitHub's down, I can't do this npm install, or I can't do this composer install, and got my people, my venture capitalists looking at my company, or angel investors looking at my company right now on the website, I need to get this live for a meeting or something. And you're like, yeah, you need to really consider, this is the downfall of using these things. So
I don't know what you can't really get away from it though, can you?
The only way is caching it. The only way is caching it, using something like the Tor proxy in the case of Composer, and then running your own system like that, where when you're downloading it, you are then essentially getting that commit of that. I mean, what you could do is with a Composer lock file, essentially what happens with a Composer lock file is that is the snapshot of everything. So the hash of that, which it gives you, saying that this is this version. You could actually maybe store that the whole vendor directory as that hash in a zip file, like on maybe an external service like S3, and then it would download that as well with it if it needed it. So you could keep an update that this is that snapshot of that. I mean, that's something to look at. Maybe that's something well, I'm not sure. Then I think Tor proxy is definitely a bit more clever in the way it does it. But you could do that where it's just like, look, this is this vendor directory with this hash. Get the whole thing again. And then you wouldn't have that problem, for that snapshot. But yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
going into that world. Yeah. I mean, actually, so moving on from that, have you? So I sent you a link, the Fun with Flags game. Do you want to give it a try? This always makes good podcasting material when someone's doing something that needs to be visual.
Edman.com fun. Shall I describe it as it's happening?
You're more than welcome to.
Okay, edman.com /fun-with-flags. Fun with flags, button, start. Are we ready? Are we ready, everyone? Here we go. Start. Oh!
I found a list. So the cheat is, if you do get stuck, just look in console log. It may give you some hints.
I can do this. It's green on... It's green on the... I don't think I've ever seen that flag. Green outside with white in the middle. So it's green, white, green.
This is where you compose a logit, man.
No, it's not Ireland.
I mean,
is it Albania? No. Attempts one more. Finland. No. Oh, wrong.
So, I mean, this was a really simple game that I made.
I got that. I got Russia.
There you go. And, you can see, like, when you play around with it, it's just got a very simple text field that has placeholders in it. So, it shows you the width of, the how many characters it is. Got a very simple logic around the fact that you have 3 attempts, and then if you have more than 0 score, so it doesn't go into minuses, it will deduct a score if you do fail it, else it will add a score, and it just goes through it, and it's super simple. I'm going through it and that's why I was talking about the Browserify stuff, because I just wanted to make a really simple project. And I wanted to, in the blog post, I want to talk about like how we split up things. When you get a problem and you want to do it, like kind of think about it in the props and state way, separating what you feel should be props and what should be state, and how you can create smaller classes. The answer box itself is its own component, as opposed to which is then used by the game. And the game actually supplies the actions for what happens if you're on success or on error, and divvying up that. And I thought that would be a really interesting blog post. So yeah, this is the game for it. I've been through a couple of interesting iterations on it, actually. Like, I went through, interestingly, because there's a couple of problems which are very easy and commonplace in like things like music track shuffling and things like that, which actually I ended up coming and having a problem here with, because say like with the flag. So my initial iteration, my initial version, the way it got it was it got a random flag. It has a list of flags, and then it just picks out a random one. That's fine, but what happens if I don't want you to get the same flag again? So what do I do? So what I initially did was, okay, I'll keep it history.
So you don't keep repeating the same one.
That's it. You don't want to you don't want to repeat the same one, and also you don't actually want to repeat the same one again ever. You want it to go through them all, and then once it's done, then it's finished the game. Like, there's no point in having it again.
Just change the state on scene or not?
Well, this is it. So I store a list of the history. So this is the history of what you've already seen. And what then happens is, what I did was then I had a function that was simply, here's the flags, here's the history. Go through picking out a random flag until you haven't seen one before. Because, if you pick out the flag that's already in the history, pick out another flag. And eventually you get it and you return a new flag and you start in history. That's cool. That's fine. I thought, it looks a bit messy though. I was like, that doesn't feel right to me still. It looks too much code for what it really needs to be. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute. All I need to do is just shuffle the list. If I just shuffle the flag list and pick off the one from the top, then it's great. Like, that's it. That's done. And so what I do is, so I get my props in, which is the flags. I then shuffle that, make a clone of that list, shuffle it, and I'm just popping off the top, each flag, and then you only get that flag once, and eventually when the list becomes, empty, you're done with it. And it's just solving a problem in a different way and kind of thinking of it. And I feel it provides a far more succinct, cleaner way of doing it. You get the upfront cost of obviously shuffling the list, but for me, that intuitively make more sense than storing a history and then having to have this while loop, which is going through. But it's always fun when you kind of see a problem and you solve it in one way first, but the more you kind of look into it, you can kind of simplify it, and eventually your solution gets, changes. So it's always fun doing that. But yeah, other than that, I mean,
you can get it right down to so many few lines of code after.
Well, I mean, this is the nice thing, because obviously, so the way I was doing it was I was like, oh, this looks ugly. Like, especially for a blog post, sometimes you want blog posts to look quite nice code, syntaxy and things like that. You want it to be nice, clean, succinct code, which is a couple of lines for doing certain things. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look that nice. There's a lot of logic in here. And I probably, if I was deploying this, I probably would be like, actually, that's fine enough. It does the problem. It solves the problem at hand. But I thought, actually, no, let's have a look. And that's when I was like, oh, actually, and actually, I'll show you. So, again, brilliant podcasting material, but people can go, I'll put this in the show notes of what it actually is. But if you look at this here, what this is the next flag function that I use internally in the game component. And all I have to do, because I've already got the flag, so I need to know how many attempts you want, so I get the attempts out. Like, this is the attempts, this is how many attempts per flag you have. I need to get out the flags. So I've got all the flags that are in state, which is the randomized shuffled version. And all I'm able to do is able to use the array destructuring, which is what is available in ES6, which just says get me the first flag and all the other flags. And then setting the state again is just, and this is where the nice thing is, it's just because with JavaScript, with ES6 now, when you use JSON objects, if it's the same, if the variable is equal to the same as the key, you just have to provide it once, which is just, the name of the variable, and it will do it for you. And then I just pass back state with flags, flag and attempts, and it's set the state again. It's very nice and clean, and yeah, it's a nicer solution in my eyes, and it uses all the nice syntactic sugar that's available in ES6, which is great for a blog post where you can kind of see it straight there.
Yeah, that's cool. I might have a little look at that.
No, it's interesting. I mean, this is the thing with like going through iterations and stuff and like changing it, because I'll show you after the episode, I'll show you what I did, originally, and I probably should have actually kept the history. It sucks. I should have kept the history. What I was doing was just amending the initial commit. And I was like, actually looking back, I'm like, actually, I should have kept the history, because it was interesting, like the kind of iterations on it, where I had the initial version, I was slowly tweaking it, to be different, like looking, try and make it better, make it cleaner. And that's when I like code. I love code where I can, solve a problem. Solving a problem is always nice, but it's always nicer to be able to go, actually, I've solved the problem. How do I make this code look better or be better or act better, be more readable, as opposed to be more just solving the problem.
It's all part of the learning curve of anything, though, isn't it?
I think that's it. Absolutely. I mean, and actually, sorry, I'm rambling here completely.
No, it's fine.
But I actually released a blog post today, which I've been going on yabbling on about Postgres and SQL and relational databases now and stuff. And I'm really getting into the relational database stuff, internals. And there's a couple of blog posts that I've kind of got my eye on doing around these things, because I do feel that you go into like your SQL and stuff, and you explain, analyze, and you're looking at all these joins, and you're like, okay, so it's using these indexes, it's not using an index. Oh, then it's using these joins, and there's different joins. Particularly in like Postgres, we have like sort merges, and then you have hash joins, and then you have just loop joins, which essentially just going through in a loop. And I was like, okay, well, this can be you can programify this. You can do simple and actually I found some very good repos on GitHub where the people have actually written these algorithms. Wow. In code, which are very simple. This is how you do it with an array. And I thought, this is great, and I'm going to try and do my own kind of little thing on that. Make it a little different and kind of maybe explain it in a different way, because the way I understand it is a little different, like, way I think about it, and maybe that'll help someone. Who knows, but yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on there. But I released a blog post today, which is a really simple deck of cards in Postgres. And essentially, last night I was just like, I've got all these ideas for like Postgres functions, and I'm learning all these things. So I'm like, let's just try and play around with it. And so I was, essentially I made a deck of cards as a CTE, which is a common table expression, which is this with clause, which allows you to essentially have temporary tables when you're running your queries. And I had a deck of cards, and it had a rank and a card, and I was able to use cross joins, which is the Cartesian product of, using this thing, so you unnest, you get string to array, you split them all out, which is all of the ranks you can have. Then you have your suits, you do a Cartesian product on that, which is just a cross join, which is just getting everything that's in the first one and matching it with everyone in the second one. So then that gives me the 52 cards, which is a nice succinct way of doing it. And then I'm able to use simple randomizing to get a hand out of this table. Like I want to, poke a hand maybe of 5 cards. And then I want the it's the n choose k problem, where I want all the combinations of 5 cards that I can get within this. And I'm able to do that again with a Cartesian product, again with using a cross join, which is again just a simple thing where it's just getting all the rows from that, and timesing it, so you're getting all of the options. But to get like the combination as opposed to the permutations, which is using where position of each card is actually important as well, makes it unique. This is just a combination. It doesn't matter if I get the ace of spades first before the ace of clubs. That counts as one combination with those two in that hand. I'm able then to use that with the where clause, and I've shown it there, really simple, to get all a count of all the combinations. And it was just fun, like using SQL in this way and kind of exploring it more and looking more into depth of what you can do with just in SQL.
Is some of that syntax, is that all SQL syntax then, or is some of that Postgres as well?
So it's all SQL, but yeah, so some bits are functions that are only available in Postgres. So things like the string to array and the unnest. But then the with clause is like a generic standard CTEs, which is a with, with deck as, and then there is not available in MySQL, sadly. It's something that's available in other ones like Oracles and the MS SQLs of the world. And again, like the select array, like arrays are a data type that's not available in MySQL. It's only available in Postgres, which allows you to essentially, have a data type which is an array, which is, a composite of many, values of the same type.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, it's just a complete tangent. But I just thought it's
I'm reading at the same time.
But it's fun just kind of like exploring different things and going into these different things and like where I kind of came from with MySQL and now where I'm at. I'm happy, with like kind of and enjoying looking at this in a different light. Exploring it more.
Learning this for your own sake, or is this as part of work stuff?
I think it's a bit of both, really, because we use Postgres at work and we do a lot of data analytics and stuff. And actually, this week was my first ever venture into cohort analysis versus time-based analysis. And I would forgive you for not knowing what the hell that meant, because I have no idea what that meant beforehand.
Say it again.
Cohort analysis versus cohort analysis. Yeah, statistical analysis. There's like 4 different types supposedly, and one of them's cohort, and another one is time based. And I can't remember what the others.
Cohort? Do you mean?
Yeah, COHORT. And this is something that I would never have thought of before, but analytics, when we got this big data, storing this data is great, but actually doing something with it is even better and more important. This is where you turn data into information. And yeah, so big data is great. Trying to store it is fun, like we go, I can store this information, but then actually doing something with it is more important. And this is where SQL comes in and where, processing it. Now, my job, my thing is get it into code as quick as possible, but it's not the best. SQL is very good at doing this job.
Yeah.
And yeah, so cohort analysis essentially is. So let me see if I can try to explain it without acting. Well, firstly, without confusing myself again, which it turns out it happens quite frequently. So cohort analysis is to say within a time frame of a month. I say at this particular time, so I say, at the beginning of this month, certain leads happen. So within this time frame, these leads at this time were a certain state, they were added. So we published, we sent out these leads to certain tradesmen. So at this date, we sent out these leads. Now, from those leads, I want a month window of the history of what happened to those leads, what happened after a month. That's cohort, because what it's saying is at a certain time they shared a certain thing, and Wikipedia has a really good introduction, a really good article into the details on it. But at a certain time they shared a certain thing, a certain attribute, and what happened over that time. So it allows you to see after a month, this is what happened to those leads that were happening at that time. That's fine. That's great. And then you get into time-based analysis, which is so slightly different, where what happens is you take a chunk of time. You can almost figure it like a window, whereas before you were looking at these leads and you were saying, okay, these leads, snapshot of all those lead IDs, what happened to those lead IDs? What instead you're doing is you're getting a window and you're saying, in this month, what happened to these leads, two leads in this month? Not what happened to specific leads, what happened to any leads in this month, essentially, because you can be like, okay, well, one lead at the beginning of the month was hired, one lead wasn't, and stuff like this. But they could be all dotted different leads. Like, you're not getting leads as specifics, you're getting just a time frame instead, which is the time base, which is, they both have their own merits. But I think I've explained that. I'm sure I haven't.
I think I know what you mean.
But these are things where I'm opening up and I'm like, wow, I did not realise all this and how hard it is and how confusing it is and how interesting all this is.
What was the ultimate purpose for that then?
So ultimate purpose is a project I've been working on is for an admin backend for tradesman success, which is working out interesting facts about the tradesman. We've got with stats, all these things, and it's helping the teams to work out who maybe tradesmen that need assistance or how they're doing and things like that, and aggregating all that data into actually figures that make sense. Because again, it's great having this data, but it's nice, the end goal is to have figures that actually help solve, this person, he seems to have a problem between this month and this month. He seems to have spent more money on shortlisting but not got as much back or in return. Let's ring him up and see what's been going on. And it allows you to flag these things, so it allows you to give true insight into what's happening.
Yeah, you're storing a huge amount of data in the first place anyway then, by the sounds of it.
Well,
you're literally tracking every kind of...
I mean, it's kind of, we have to track this stuff as is, but it's then using it in a good way. in an interesting way of like actually getting analysis out of it. And I think for me, I've never really seen the analytics side of it all, because I've always been the guy who just stores it and, maybe does some work on it, like little bits, but never really seen, okay, well, we've got all this information. What, this is where, the business owners, the people who, they want this information back. They want certain stats back. They want to know, how many percentage of, leads this guy at this time with this kind of state do, and things like that. And I'm like, okay, yep, I'll try and do that. And eventually get to a query, and it's really been fun learning these things where I'm like, CTEs, which is the with clause, these common table expressions, they're great for these things. I'm able to kind of break up the problem into little chunks and stuff that I'm like, SQL is the best at this. It was invented to do these things. Whereas what I would typically do is just try and get it all into code, which isn't the best way.
Cool.
So yeah, Lou, I think it's been another great episode. Again, I've done the same thing. I think that's just become my tagline, where
overconfident.
Overconfident.
Overcompetent.
I'm overconfident.
I've got my word wrong.
I like that. I'm competent. I'm overconfident, as opposed to being overconfident. Overconfidence at the end of the show. But no, I've really enjoyed it, Lou. It's been great talking to you. And we should hopefully speak to the audience next week. Have a good one.
Have a good one, guys. Cheers.
Bye. And was it happy programming?
Happy programming.
Happy coding, happy programming.
Happy hacking.
Happy hacking. I like that.
Yeah.
Speak to you later, guys. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.